like, it's time for you to get up there. I said, oh. Yeah.
So my name is Emeki Bekwe.
And I'm Stephanie Abekwe.
And today we're going to switch it up a little bit. So we've been going through this marriage and relationship series. So today we have a chance to have a discussion. And so we have a group of panelists who are going to join us, and we're going to make sure this is a conversation.
Yeah, so our hope is that we can have an authentic conversation around relationship. As you guys know, there are a lot of resources out there about relationships, about dating, about marriage. Not all of them are Christian resources. So we wanted to provide the church a resource of Christian advice and perspective. And I'll just set the disclaimer, none of these things that we're going to talk about, we're not exactly experts in relationships, but we are experts in our lives. And so we're going to give our opinions and our perspectives, and our panel will. And we invite you guys to join in on the discussion. And the way that you can do that is by scanning a QR code that'll be at the top here. We'll have that displayed for you guys. Scan it. You'll be able to put your questions in. Now I want you to really get your questions in early because we only have about 15 minutes where that QR code will be available. So as we're having conversation and we're introducing our guest, please put your questions in so we can incorporate that into our conversation.
All right, and without further ado, we will introduce our wonderful panelists. So first up, the newlyweds, Banke and Jalen.
Give them a hand clap as they come on. Married for 2 awesome months. They're going to give us their perspectives on marriage. Their perspective is valuable. Point it away from there. Yeah, there you go. All right, awesome. And so next we're going to have our couple with a little seasoning and spice. Our married couple for about 10 years, a little more now, Oluchi and Kevin.
And next up, representing for the single ladies, it is our wonderful
ladies.
Winnie.
Come on, Winnie. Awesome. And for the single men, do we have any single men out there? 2, awesome. All right, for the single men, we have Davis. Come on, Davis. Give us your perspective. Awesome. Okay, so we're going to start off this conversation just by introducing ourselves a little more. So like I said before, I'm Stephanie Abekwe. We've been married now for how long? Pop quiz?
8 years.
8 years, he's got it. So we've been married for 8 years, we'll be 9 in August. And so we are gonna also give our perspective on things, but we want you guys also to go ahead and scan that QR code. It's up now, and give us your ideas.
All right, and let's get ready to dive right in. I think we'll start off with this question, which is a question we've heard a lot from a lot of singles who are in different stages of dating. What sort of characteristics or what are you looking for in a potential spouse? And in fact, I'll start with Stephanie.
Oh.
What were you looking for
Okay.
when you were dating for a potential spouse?
I was looking for you. Well, yes, I was looking for you. But really, I'm going to say something that might be a little controversial in the church, but I don't think it's that controversial. I was looking for somebody that I like to be around, that I found attractive, both personality-wise and physically. And so that was probably higher on the list than I'd like to admit. But then also, a Christian, obviously, somebody who walks with Christ. But I think one of the biggest things that was on my list of things was somebody who was accountable to someone else. That was really important to me because I thought, if I'm going to be in a marriage where I have to submit to my husband, I want him to be submitting to another entity, God, but then some humans who can confirm what he thinks we should do. So what about you guys? What did you look for in a marriage, or what are you looking for the singles?
I mean, I guess I'll go. I'll say, so I'm single out here. I'm not married. And I'll say something in addition to what you've shared, Stephanie, that's really important to me as a person of character and a person of integrity, right? I think those that to me is something that's so long-standing beyond, looks and everything else. It's like, are you a person of integrity? Are you also a person whose life I want to grow to be with, and I want to look more like you? Because the people you spend time with, you tend to become more like them, right? So like, is your life really attractive in terms of like, are you kind, right? Do you have, I'm an extrovert and I love to do different things, right? So like, do you have other things kind of going on? And all of that is something that's really important, but character integrity.
Yeah, that's important. I want to touch on that. So you said an extrovert. You're an extrovert.
Yes.
So are you looking for an extrovert? Because that would be a lot,
Yeah. No, I'm not necessarily looking for an extrovert, but I know that, I guess for me, I wouldn't speak for all extroverts, but I'll say that it's important that someone has like other things, other activities that they like to do, right? So we can go and do things. I love being outdoors and taking care of my body because I think that's very, very important. So, yeah.
All right. What about one of the married folk? Y'all want to say what y'all were looking for?
So this is my kind of perspective, kind of looking back. I hope everyone can hear me, Kevin Emmanuel. I think that while those characteristics and those are kind of fundamental things. One of the things that for my prayer was actually for clarity and recognition of who my spouse was, because while there may be options as far as the guys are concerned, I was looking for what was right for me. Someone who would work with me to build whatever vision God had placed in me and her, and it now becomes our vision. So rather than a list issue, it was more for what is God's vision and clarity for this, so that when I see my wife, I can pretty much be like, wow, which is pretty much what happened.
So, sorry, I'm going to ask Kevin, in that, what did finding clarity look like practically?
Oh, I'll give you the very specific words that I used. I said, God, I want you to reveal to me that when I see my wife, she will see me as her husband, and I will see her as my wife. And to me, it was more than just a physical thing. It was a spiritual thing that regardless, because even the way things happened, I was around a whole bunch of beautiful women, but I saw her and there was something about her that was just, I can't explain. I really can't. And to this day, even this morning, I saw that same thing, and it's just a recognition of something deep in my spirit that just said, this is your wife. This is it. So it's beyond what I can actually describe. I can list a whole bunch of stuff, but I don't think that I even knew what I needed at that time.
That's amazing.
All right. So we're going to look on this side of the room. Do y'all want to offer it? Whether it's a list or a feeling, what are you looking for in a prospect or in a husband or wife?
So I love something that Lisa said during the prayer, how your spouse is your purpose partner. And so just going along with, of course, there needs to be the physical attraction. But, in contrast to Kevin's story where he knew like right away, or his wife knew that that was her husband. He knew that was his wife. For me, it's like, once I met him, well, first we met on online dating on an app. So there wasn't like we were in a room and we pointed someone out like, oh, that's my husband, that's my wife. But it was more so of like, I personally couldn't come to that decision just on first meeting someone. It's like in the process of getting to know them, getting to understand their fruit. Like, how do they act when their sibling hurts them, or how do they feel about marriage? Like, just through conversations and just getting to know them as a friend and through all of that, that's how I really got to that point where I had the confirmation. Of course, I had that peace from God, but just to provide another perspective, it's not always like, oh my gosh, that's my husband or that's my wife. Sometimes it's getting to know them and going through that the practical exercise of really asking God over a period of time, is this person for me? So that was our experience.
And just to clarify, it wasn't that I knew that she was my wife. There was just something about her.
And I guess I'll answer too.
Yeah. I would love to know.
And I think kind of echoing what Banker was saying, which I'm probably going to make up a word here, but work with ability. So the ability for someone to work with you, because which is something I was looking for before marriage, but even now that we've been married, I mean, almost 10 years, it's even more important now than I could have ever dreamed of. Because you think about it, as individuals or as humans, we're not stagnant, we're dynamic. And so there are things that we go through that cause stress in our lives that we have no idea how we would even approach it until it comes. So you think about some of the major stressors, I mean, becoming parents, maybe loss of a job, loss of income, loss of a home, all these things that you can't really predict how you're going to react and how that person's going to react. So if you have someone who's willing to work with you through those challenges, I think that's something that's very, very important.
Absolutely. Well, I think from everybody's answers so far, I've heard this underlying tone of someone who's a commonality in a walk with Christ, and in addition to those things, you build, right? And so, as a married person coming to church and I'm married, that's a completely different thing than being single and coming to church where there are other single people. Some of the things that we've talked about in our women's chat group that we have is that it's difficult for several reasons to date within the church and to find that person who you can work with, to find the person that you may look at and say, that's my wife, and she's like, I don't know, So, when you make that declaration and you've gone out with that person a couple of times, now everybody kind of sees you as that, maybe. And so, what perspective can some of the singles give us on dating within your church? Because this is where you're going to meet Christians, right? So,
And Davis, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but as she mentioned in the women's group, I mean, in the men's chat too, there have been a lot of guys who have brought up, just the challenges of dating within your home church specifically. So if you could speak to that and kind of what, advice would you have for them or for the ladies too?
Yeah, so I'm not a relationship expert or anything like that, but I think that, when it comes to, I talk to a lot of the guys and I observe a lot as well too. I feel like I'm naturally very observant. What I'm seeing, especially within our home church here at King City, I think that a lot of times there is an assumption first. I feel like there's an assumption, there's a lot of, we talked about it early in the week as well too, as far as, why aren't men coming up to me in the church? And I think that there's an assumption that the men should come up to you. And the way that I think of it as is kind of like, I think for a lot of guys, there's a lot of different reasons, but I think the first thing, a lot of guys, sometimes when they're just coming to church, they're just trying to come to church and just experience God. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of times, like, they're not exactly in a place where it's just like, I'm trying to find my wife there. You know what I mean? I just want to go, experience God, worship, and then leave. I see a lot of times, like, with the women as well, too, there's women, they come in, they just go straight out, right? And then those are sometimes the same people that say that, why aren't guys coming to me, right? So church is about community, right? So it's just like you have to connect outside of just whenever you come to church, you're going to leave, right? I think that you should stay behind, you know what I mean? That we have a great community here, stay behind, become friends, kind of like what they were saying. I think the best relationships, just like Dai was saying, is the ones that are actually friends, you know what I mean? Like, I think that everyday life, when I see like great marriages, like my parents, you see Dials and different people's, I feel like that's just everyday life, right? The small things you enjoy doing together, right? So.
Davis, can I just throw one more question your way? Where are you, like the single men? Because the women want to know. I've got a lot of people up giving us a thumbs up on this question. Where are the single men? Give us three top places.
I see
Identify
here,
yourself.
So, so just like I was saying, like, I think that a lot of times it's just like this like, even though this would be the most ideal place to meet someone, that's probably not most guys' objectives when it's coming to church, right? So I think that you have to, like, once you come to that realization, it's like, okay, like, if a guy comes into me, he does. If he doesn't, then that's okay. It's kind of like a guy coming to church, right? And he's just like, man, I'm a Christian guy. Like, why aren't women coming up to me and saying they want to cook for me? That's the way that I see it as. You know what I mean? It's just like, there's
so I got that point. But where are you? If not church, then where? The gym?
They're everywhere. You know what I mean? God, like, there's guys everywhere. You know what I mean? Like, I just think it's just, if a guy really wants to like talk to you, he'll talk to you. That's what it is. So it's just like, it's not like he's gonna want to talk to you more because you're in church.
Okay,
I just
so
feel like
ladies, the answer is
They're
everywhere.
somewhere.
Guys are everywhere. You know, they're everywhere.
So,
they're everywhere. Okay, Winnie.
well, and I think, I think there's something about like, okay, I feel like everybody is coming to church to get to know the Lord, right? Like that's hopefully the goal as you're coming to church. And as you're here, you're building friendships, you're getting to meet people, and then you're starting to discover, right, do they have these characteristics, etc. But I think specifically within dating within the church, and when I'm thinking about church, I think about the global church, right? So it can't be just specifically King City. I think if you're trying to meet people, you need to kind of get plugged into other faith-based, events that are going on in the city. We live in an amazing city, so there's stuff like Philly Connect, right? And then there's other large churches, other small churches that are doing events, whether they're for singles or young adults. I think just going to those things, you're going to meet more people, because I know some of the people here too, like they met their spouse at a different church or at a church event that was not their own home church. So I think stepping out and doing that, going and doing things where, kind of in hobbies that you like to do, whether it's playing tennis or, doing whatever you'd like to, because there are guys there, right? Unless it's like a woman's only thing, right? And then from there, you can discover, do they have those characteristics? I think locking yourself into just like finding men at a particular place may not give you the best economics, right? It's like supply and demand, so you gotta think about it a little differently.
I like that. And let's throw it to our married couples too.
Perfect.
Go ahead, Jay.
So I'll just add to that conversation in that many times a lot of young professionals in 20s to 30s or even older are trying to build their career and maybe going to grad school or doing something, working just in a professional sense, and there's a desire to like build passive income and have side hustles and things. So it's hard to get out and do extra personal things that many people may say, well, I can be spending time on my business or spending time on this and that. So I'm, of course, biased towards apps since I met my wife on an app. But it's really a practical thing to put a profile on there. While you're doing your own thing, that app is working in the background, almost like a headhunter in a sense for a job. And so
Look at it. I've never thought about it that way. That's good.
while you like,
headhunters.
so I'm definitely not. I think that there's multiple components to it. While you're on the app, that's one way, but that doesn't mean to stop completely going up to women and talking to them in the social settings that you find yourself in, because you're going to need that skill anyway when you meet in person. The app doesn't do other steps of dating for you, like holding the door open or telling you like you should pay for this date or different things like that. You're going to have to learn and know those things all yourself. The app is just kind of facilitating you two meeting, and then after that, it's up to you to do what you need to do.
Good, wait, hold on, because I know I kind of have a feeling where we're going. I just want to touch real quick on where you guys met, and then we're going to jump this way. Okay? All right.
Yeah. Can you all hear me? Okay. I think maybe we're a little bit more old school, but because we didn't do apps, but we were doing what Winnie was doing or saying, going around meeting things. When I was single, I was going to all the different churches, singles ministry events, just really not to meet people, but actually to meet. I mean, not to meet him, but to meet people, just because I felt like these were my people. These are people I could hang out with. These are people I could get to know and just have fun with. So these were the people that I look forward to having fun with. And it just so happened that one day my friend invited me to go to their church, and then his friend invited him to go to that church as well. So we met at a church that neither one of us went to. It was their singles event, and we connected there. And it was just, I mean, the way God put it together. But in that, I was very intentional about meeting other Christians just to build my community. So, I mean, I love the apps. I love the Headhunter.
Yeah, that was good.
That was a good one.
Yeah.
But I think there's something about going out and meeting people and making these connections, even if it's not necessarily to find your spouse, but just to meet other like-minded people.
And in a lot of ways, it's not even a question for the single people of location. It's actually a question of position. Because I could have gotten to that, same Bible study and not really put myself out there, not really spoken to her, not really done what I'd been praying about for almost a year and a half. So when I talked about clarity, it was truly that. Because in that year and a half, I had met a whole bunch of people, but there's something that God just places in you, in my opinion, at least from my experience, that says, hey. And the other thing I would say is that dating, in a lot of ways, I think people. I would say we need to treat it like almost like a job. For a job, we stretch ourselves, we'll put ourselves out there. There are things that we will do in order to make that paper. But in order to actually meet somebody, there are taboos. Oh, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that.
Like
No.
what? Let's be specific. I want to know, like what?
No, I'm serious. Like, where are the men? Where are the professional men? A lot of
Right.
us are building our careers. We're going to conferences. We're doing all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Those are places to actually meet
Oh,
people.
I see. That's good. I
Are
love
you
that.
being intentional about meeting people and actually
Yeah.
doing that? The same way you would be intentional about your job or your career, your school, the way we study, the way we really put in effort. I think that a lot of people don't put in that same kind of effort into finding the person you're going to spend the rest of your life with, which is arguably much more important. Instead, we kind of just wait for this chance happening, but it doesn't always happen that way.
All right. So, Davis, it sounded like you wanted to say something earlier.
Yeah, I was going to say that, just because you're a Christian does not mean that you're going to have a great personality. It doesn't mean that you're going to be a great conversationalist. You know what I mean? So that's why I agree to what he was saying. I just wanted to add on to that as far as when it comes to, y'all have been kind of saying the same lines. Like when it comes to something that you want, you're going to put time into it, right? Just because you love God as well too, going back to what I said, you have to put in work into being like a great conversationalist. You have to put in work into like having good conversations. I talk about it all the time with different people, especially when it comes to some guys as well too, some single guys are really cringe when it comes to like approaching women. You know what I mean? So, I think it's the basis of how you're, a lot of times if you just approach them like as a friend, especially like in the church, I feel like if you really want to connect with someone in church, kind of like what we're going back and saying, just get involved. You know what I mean? Get involved, serve in one way or the other, right? With the intention of, you get to actually become friends with someone, and then it can develop into more. And if it doesn't, it's okay. So yeah.
Okay, well, for those of us, women, who are looking for someone, I think we talked about this earlier this week, the group date idea. I don't know what you guys think. Unfortunately, the Q&A is closed, but what are your thoughts around, a bunch of single people maybe going out, and it's not a date, but we're just going out and trying to get to know each other. How do we facilitate something like that happening?
Yeah. So I think that it's fun doing that. Like group dates is like fun because you actually get to, it takes a lot of pressure off of, if there's one person in particular that you're trying to focus on, you know what I mean? You can kind of see like in a different, light, right? You can kind of just converse with them in like, very like chill ways, and you can do multiples of that. And then I think from there, kind of like what I've been learning from there, if you feel like that's someone that you want to, because I think for guys, one thing that we don't do the best job of is a lot of times, like whenever you're taking, especially in the day and age that we're living now, if you take out a woman, nobody's going into taking out a woman with said like, I just want to be her best friend. You know what I mean? Like if you take her out, guys, we have to do a better job. And I'm speaking to myself as well too. If you're taking her out one-on-one, I already know, oh boy, like, she's already, I think that a lot of times, like, there's already the assumption, like, if he's taking me out one-on-one, this kid, he's potentially wanting something more, right? So with that,
So
yeah.
that's important. Oh, go ahead, Winnie.
No.
Tell us what you-
Okay, so I guess my question is, I want to get clarification on a group date and just like hanging out as friends, because I think because I think what you're speaking to me, if you haven't asked people, it's like, okay, we're gonna have a group date, and I don't know where am I on that, but there isn't clarity, right? You're all just hanging out,
Yeah,
you
you're
know?
just hanging out.
And so
Yeah.
I think, yeah, so you're saying, okay, so I think the consensus is we want to have more hangouts, right, to get to know each other,
Yeah.
but I think I think to me, there's an importance in asking somebody out, right? Taking them on a date. And let's say after going on a date with somebody, it's not a fit, just having open communication. I think what happens is that people kind of slide into this like less talking, weird
Right.
ghosting situation, and then it gets awkward. And I think we need to develop like even like as Christians being, because you can say like, you know, you can let somebody know like this isn't a good fit in a kind way. I think that that's very important because I think without the lack of clarity, then I think that's where people just like kind of are in this shifty place and they don't make decisions, which I think is very important. And we're also brothers and sisters, right? Like above, you know, wanting to meet people and everything, we are brothers and sisters. So I think that that's an important thing to keep in mind.
I think one thing that Jalen you brought up is the concept of online dating or using dating apps. It's interesting because, of course, this wouldn't have been a discussion 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So just wondering from a Christian standpoint, you know, how do you navigate it? Kind of what were the challenges you all had when you were using it, and just advice that you would have for people who are interested.
So I will say, at first, I wasn't on the app that I met Benkei on.
What app was that? So we know.
It was
Free commercial.
so blackpeoplemeet.com. No, I'm playing. It was a Christian. So the first app was a Christian app, like
Okay.
specifically Christians.
Name
I
of
forget
it
the name.
was?
It was like I forget.
The game.
But-
That's not where we met,
Details.
though.
Yeah,
Okay,
it
where'd
wasn't
y'all
where we
meet?
met.
Where'd y'all meet?
We met on Hinge, but
Oh, okay.
as a Christian,
Write that
I was
down.
like, okay, I really want a Christian woman, so I'm gonna get on the Christian app so that it'll be really clear that I'm looking for a Christian woman and I'm a Christian guy. But on the Christian app, unfortunately, the population is low. The amount of people, because not everybody knows about the app. That app wasn't paying for commercials and different things like that, so people just didn't know about that app. But so I would see a lot of the same people, but I was like, okay. As I'm scrolling, I would see a lot of the same accounts come up.
Right.
Eventually, I switched to Hinge, and
You had more of a variety.
there's more. There is, but it's just practically speaking. They pay for ads. They have more work put into that app, so people just in general are going to make accounts on there, and so.
Benkei, please help us.
Yeah, no, I would say it's really important to, if you're considering getting into apps, definitely research like what each app is about. There's things like Tinder, which of course is more of like I'm not gonna say it's a hookup app in case some of y'all are on there, but
Well, they may
different
not know
apps.
that that's what it's for. I didn't know that. So
Yeah,
if you're
yeah.
on Tinder, that's what people are looking for.
Potential. Okay, let me not make a generalization, but you know, I think we both ended up on Hinge because Hinge is kind of known as like a long relationship type of app. I'll say for myself, when I started going on apps, it was the middle of the pandemic. I wasn't going to church because we were all locked down. I was only going to the grocery store and the park. And I was expecting to meet someone there. I would make longer eye contact. Nothing happened. So I said, how can I meet my husband? So that's really, and then someone told me a success story. The next day I was on Hinge and a couple other apps. And so that's kind of how I got in. But before I got into apps, and that might be the case for some of people here, I had a really bad stigma of apps. I thought it was just like, there aren't normal people on there. There aren't people that I, would want to be with. Honestly, I've seen people in the church on Hinge. So,
One of
So,
the questions actually on here was, do we need to date? I'm tired of the apps. Can I just live my life, or am I wasting my time?
Well, one thing I did want to just say shortly on the app too is that I kind of thought of it like a distribution, a normal distribution, right? I'm an engineer, and so my mindset was, okay, if I sample from the pool enough times, I will eventually find someone that's way above average, and thankfully, I found somebody that was like extremely above average and just in every way possible. So keep looking, keep sampling from that distribution.
Oh, hold on. I think I overheard a question. Someone say, "Did you pay for it?"
Absolutely not.
That's what.
Did for like a few months. But when I'm at bank, I wasn't paying for it. My subscription ran out, and I was like, I'm not paying again.
It's an investment. Why not?
Yeah, I
Go
agree.
ahead, Mary.
I was gonna say, Stephanie, to the question that you had, I just think it's, I think it's really good to like go out there, do what you're doing, like live life to the question that you're saying. And then as you're doing that, meeting people, right? Because you're gonna meet people as you're doing that. I don't think, spending so much time on the apps or I think there's seasons where like you're deep into it. There's seasons where you're not so much. So I think just continuing to like pray and just be mindful of how being on apps or dating or whatever is affecting, like your mental health and your life. But I don't think you should stop it. I also do agree that like dating is like a part-time job, right? Like you have to, especially for women, right? It's like there are all of these things that you got to do, and just like you would to get to your goal. And so I think that that's it. Whether it's going on apps, whether it's just doing different things. I think that that's just very important to be intentional towards that because that's a goal that you're wanting in life. And I remember hearing somebody say that like finding somebody is not like a hit and run situation, So that's something that I've always kind of kept in mind. You got to be intentional.
We have some questions for the married couples. One is, I'm sorry, I lost it. Okay. How have you balanced marriage, children, work, household chores, etc.? And then there is another question on head of the household. How does that look in your marriage? So can we speak on that?
Sure. I would say with balance, I don't like when we use that word because that kind of says that everything is equal, but it can't be equal, especially in different seasons of life. Some things are going to be a little bit more important than others as we kind of go along. But I always like to stress that your faith has to be number one. I mean, especially if you went to God, you said, God, provide me with this spouse. Now when God has provided you with this spouse, you can't go and make your spouse number one, the kids number two, and all that, and leave God behind because you're making an idol of the things that God has given you. So whatever season you're in, your faith should still be number one. And then with that, you use the rest of your time to kind of add in the other important things kind of in there. You have to rank them and then figure out what's going to be most important to you in that season. But just know that in some seasons, you're going to pour into your kids more, or you're going to pour into your job a little bit more. But finding a spouse that's able to kind of work with you on that and be there for you, pick up the slack when you need it, and support you in that, I think is really important.
I would say a lot of it, I look at it as almost like a budget. And anything that you don't budget for, you essentially misuse. So how are you going to budget your time in different seasons? Some things are important, some things are not. As far as the head of household thing, this is my view on it. Not everybody agrees, but as the man, I believe that you're called to lead. And that leadership is more of managing, and anything that you don't manage is going to be misused. So I see myself as essentially providing for my wife and my kids. They draw out of me, and I draw from God, because if not, that fire is going to burn out pretty quickly. I hope that answers the question.
Oh, let me answer that one too. We always talk about how submission is this, terrible word or whatever. Listen, ladies, I have no problem with submission. I submit to my husband. But he knew when he was marrying me that he was marrying a professional woman. So it's not that it's like he's the head, but, they always say she's the neck. So we talk about things, we debate things, we go, if there's something big that comes up, we're going to talk about it. It's not like he's just going to go say, this is what we're doing. We definitely discuss those things. And then ultimately, he can make the decision. Because there have been several times, where I felt some way, he felt another way. I said, okay, do it your way. And then, if it doesn't quite go as planned, I just sit there and kind of like look at the side like, I'm not going to say I told you so, but... But as long as it's not like harming anybody, it's not that serious, I think we have to learn to just lower our pride and humble ourselves. I heard it described this way, like you can't have two heads. You know, people, they said that some marriages are running around as monsters, two-headed monsters. Because, no, seriously, somebody has to be able to you have some humility and allow the other person to actually lead. Otherwise, you're constantly going to be going, you're not going to go in the direction that you need to go if there's not one true leader. So that's my
Yeah,
thought on that.
that's great points. What about you guys?
Well, we have 50 days under our belt, so definitely not marriage experts at all. But I think, so of course, submission, the wife submitting to the husband is God's way. I think something that's so important when you're dating, and it was something that I considered, was who do I want, as I'm choosing my husband, who I want to be with, I have to choose someone that I want to submit to. We have to submit within marriage, but we get to choose our husband. We get to choose who our leader is in the family. And so, like, that's another thing when you're looking at characteristics. Is this person patient? Are they very prideful, or do they have some humility? Will you be able to have discussions and things like that? And then, so far with our almost 2 months, I think it's been a lot of discussions, but also knowing that, yes, he's the head of the relationship. And when those big impasse or big decisions come up, definitely taking that into consideration. But again, it's a choice that you have before you get into marriage. Who do you want to choose as your leader, as your head of your house?
And just building on that, I want to encourage single guys looking for marriage to be somebody that is easy to submit to, in a sense. Not someone that's gonna like lord it over a person, or be like, oh, it's my way or the highway, or you must do this for me right now because you're my wife, and different things like that. I think if the government was like that, that would suck and nobody would agree. Well, I mean, let me not say the government. Let me not say government. Let me say if God, let me not say government. If God was like that, where he was not merciful or kind or forgiving, then it would not be a God we would want to submit to. It would be like not even, it wouldn't be a great situation, basically. And so I think that I love what the more experienced couples said as well, and I'm learning from them too as they're speaking. Benke was also a very professional woman I knew from the beginning, and so I thought that this is somebody that I can have deep discussions with. I have worked in corporate America before and had done my PhD and discussed different things, had high-level conversations. But I knew that she was capable of doing that too as a professional woman, and so that attracted me to her as well.
I also like the part that you brought up about the way that God treats us as a church. And Lucci, you brought up about wives submitting to your husbands. And I know Pastor Dial has been going through Ephesians, and that portion where it talks about wives submitting to your husbands tends to be pretty controversial. But if we keep reading, there's a part where it says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. And so there's that sacrificial love. So even though you're the head of the household, it's because there's that sacrificial love that you're bestowing to your wife in the way that you lead.
So I want to know what this looks like for singles. You know, wives are to submit, men are to lead. You know, husbands. Thank you, Essie. Thank you. Husbands are to lead. So what are you guys' perspectives when it comes to that as in your dating relationships?
What's the question? Oh yeah, no. Can you say the question again, please?
Sure.
Yes.
So how does this relationship, right? Wives submit, husbands, lead. How does that look when you're dating? Because you're trying to find somebody who you can do those things with. So how does that look when you're dating someone?
Can I add something to that?
Yeah.
And what are some qualifying questions that you ask while you're dating to ensure they're capable of that?
Okay, and so questions that you should ask as you're dating to see if somebody is capable of that. Davis, please help us with that one.
Yeah, and I think that there's characteristics that you can see in the person, right? By their fruit you shall know them. So I think that there's certain things in their lives that you see consistently. right? You know, for guys in particular, you know, who are the men around them? Who are the guys that, you know, they're not going to be perfect or anything like that, but who are the guys that, you know, they look up to, the guys that are speaking into their lives and things like that. One thing that I can say that I appreciate you guys as well too, and not to try and go away from the question, but as far as submitting, you know, I think that as well too, like a guy that has something that he's working towards as far as his vision, because I think it can be very difficult for a woman in the day and age, especially if she's doing very well in her career, you know, such as Benke. It can be very difficult, you know, for them, especially if they're maintaining a certain lifestyle for themselves, right? And that's what I see like a lot now. So they're maintaining a certain lifestyle for themselves, and they're looking at this one guy. It's just like, man, like I do not want to, you know, downgrade, or I cannot see myself being led by this guy, you know, because he's not even leading himself, right? So with that being said, I think that, you know, for us guys in particular, I think that, you know, as we are, you know, in community with other guys and, you know, growing in that aspect, I think that, I mean, women are really intelligent, so they can see that, right? They see that even before you even talk to them. So, you know, Joyce, as far as your question, when it comes to what are questions, I think that, you know, yes, you can ask those questions. There's a lot of great questions to ask for sure, but I think that you're going to see consistently in their lifestyle.
It kind of reminded me, when you were saying that, it reminded me of this situation that's been going on in the media with a certain person. Sorry? Yes, the bus driver. So, you know, for anybody who's not aware of the situation, there was an interview, and I think it was Iyanla asked Ebony K. Williams, who's a very well-known TV personality, whether she would date or consider dating a bus driver. And so, you know, we talked about, you want to have all these wonderful characteristics, and you want him to lead and all these things, but like, just really speaking, like, let's just get down to the nitty gritty and be very authentic. You know, does the man's ability to provide a certain lifestyle or a woman's, you know, beauty or whatever the men are looking for, like, how much are you putting into your dating relationships? And you guys, you know, you guys have been shouting out to me, so y'all can shout out and tell me what y'all think. But for the people on the panel, you know, how would you answer that question, maybe? And then how do we move forward with that answer?
I'll say quickly on that is for me, I was looking for somebody with a growth mindset, in a sense. So they could be at a certain, thank you. As I was looking for someone to marry, they didn't have to necessarily have a great paying job or like have money or this or that or like those different things. But as long as they had a mindset that was towards going upwards and continue to grow in their relationship with Christ, for one, first and foremost, but then also, do they have an growth mindset, in a sense? Whatever stage they're at, if you see growth in their mind and in the things that they do, then I think that's the biggest thing about them.
Yeah, can you elaborate more on growth mindset versus mindset?
So growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. Anybody want to give us some more information? Yeah.
I was going to say, like, I think it's, you know, going off of what you said, and I'm going to answer that question. I think it's sometimes what I see, you know, I think it's a little bit harder for women to accept that when it comes to men, especially when it comes to how much they're making, because men use different metrics when it comes to choosing a woman than women use, right? So specifically, we're talking about finances and maintaining a certain lifestyle. So with that being said, like, I think that men, we don't necessarily look at women as like how much money she's making, right? Because for us, that doesn't necessarily say security. I think what says security is just like, man, can she work with me at where I'm at, right? Is she willing to, you know, what we've been saying, the word workability, right? So is she peaceful, right? You know, is she lovely? Is she kind? And things like that. And those are things that obviously I see common with y'all. I think that with women, from what I see, is a lot of times it's like they're looking at this man and the lifestyle that they have. Because there's been a time where, you know, I've, in my particular case, I can say that, you know, when it comes to growth mindset and the fixed mindset, I think it's just subjected to the woman herself, but I feel like there are some women that if their fixed mindset is more so if you're not maintaining this certain level of where I'm at or more, then I feel like a fixed mindset kind of comes on and saying like they cannot see themselves going below what they're already at, right? So I feel like that's kind of like where the fixed mindset could be. But I think a growth mindset is like, okay, I see where he's at. He's going somewhere, right? It's just like, I want to be a part of that, right? And I know that I can be a blessing to his life. And it's not like you're babysitting him or anything like that. He's already has, but he's just not necessarily there. Just like Dia was talking about last week, right? When it comes to, I know in a lot of ways, us guys, we want to be able to build something, right? And then whenever we've built it, we bring the woman along. But with that being said, like, we can go much farther. Things that you can accomplish in 5 years with her, you can accomplish that in a year, right? And I think that a lot of times we have to be told that over and over again because we're men naturally we're very prideful when it comes to that, right? So, yeah, that's my perspective as far as fixed and growth mindset.
Yeah, I wanted to say that I think for all the singles out there, whoever your spouse is going to be probably doesn't look, doesn't think, doesn't. It is not this person that you have in your mind. We tend to come up with this perfect picture of Mr. Right or Miss Wonderful, and usually it doesn't look exactly that way. And I think the reason is because we're going after what we want, but God knows what we need. I mean, think about it. The things that you truly need are maybe things that you wouldn't necessarily choose. Like if you're a big spender, maybe you need somebody who doesn't spend as much or who's a little bit more serious with their money. That might not be something that you automatically go for. But to answer the other question, I think that you can still see, for example, from a woman's perspective, leadership characteristics in a person. Like when my husband, when we first started dating, he was very intentional about calling me. He texts me every single day at noon. He's been doing that for more than 10 years. I mean, very intentional. He would call when he said he was going to call. He would pick me up when he said he was going to pick me up. He would choose the restaurants. It wasn't about, or wherever we were going, he would plan the dates. So I saw ways that he was leading me. He was leading the relationship. He made it very clear, like a month in, he said, "You're my wife." And at that point I was like, well, I don't know about that yet. But he made it clear with me that he was looking for a wife. He wasn't about the games. He wasn't trying to play around. These were characteristics that showed me that this is someone who has a purpose in life. He knows where he's going, and this is someone that I can follow. So I think you can still see that in the dating relationship. It doesn't have to necessarily be exactly when you're married. You can see these things while you're dating.
Absolutely. And one thing that I want to just throw out there is that this is a relationship and it's a journey. It's not something where you meet your husband and he meets his wife and then that's it. Y'all get married and you've done it. High five. Like we are growing as people, as you guys know. You've changed in the last 5 years. As you're going through marriage, you're changing. What you may perceive as being a good wife and a good husband, that might change as time goes on. So it's really important to open the communication lines very early on. Get into the habit of having conversation with your spouse or your potential spouse. Don't be afraid to be yourself.
So one thing that I'm also gonna add is that a lot of times we spend times preparing for what we do at work, school, whatever. But oftentimes we do not prepare ourselves for marriage. We do not prepare ourselves to actually be somebody who is willing to open up to meet people, to go that extra length. And something that my wife often says, like the altar is a place where things are sacrificed, but there's a preparation for that sacrifice, because in a lot of ways, when you get married, at least for me and my wife, it was a beginning. It was an entirely new thing that God had created, but there was also preparation as well. So in your singleness time, use that as a time for preparation, because marriage has its own issues, but in a lot of ways, at least as a man, we decided to call our marriage blessed, and that's what it is, regardless of what the storms are. It is blessed.
We have a couple more minutes, so if you guys have any burning questions, I know Q&A is closed, you can shout them out, but one question that I want to present to the singles that we had a lot of questions on is, how to be single. How do you do singleness well? We are pursuing relationship and marriage, but how is singleness a blessing, and how to continue on in singleness the way that you think Christ would want us to?
So this is why I'll say, because I love David. One of the things that he did was that God prepared him when he was anonymous. There's a blessing of being anonymous, where nobody can see you make your mistakes, nobody can kind of see you grow. And I kind of saw that way in marriage. There were a lot of things that I needed to figure out and I needed to prepare myself with. So that singleness period is almost like before you get to that altar and the light is shown at you that somebody else will see your everything, prepare yourself.
One other thing I would add to that point on doing those things to make a career and things of that nature. We, put on a suit and get a haircut, do all these different things. If we have an interview coming up, or like we're trying to get a job, or even if you're a business owner and you're trying to do a pitch, you don't just go up on stage and then wing it. You practice in order to do anything substantial. And so sometimes when it comes to dating, guys might feel like, well, I'm too good to dress up for this date or go another step to set a good impression and things like that. And I had to overcome that myself. Honestly, there was a point in time where I didn't necessarily buy nicer clothes or anything like that. I would think, well, she'll know I'm in grad school, so that'll be the story, and at least I'm smart, so that'll overcome that. But no, I learned eventually that if I want her to look great, or I have this picture of my mind of what she would look like, well put together, also smart and look nice, I need to do the same things and prepare myself for that, because otherwise I'll attract what I'm putting out in a sense.
Wow, that's good. That's good.
Well, I think we've come to the time where our time is fair spent. Wanted to say thank you so much to the panelists. It was a great discussion. If everyone, if you agree, can we give and
Thank you. Thank you,
so much.
everybody. I hate to end it here, but our time is